Thanks for staying with us. Time now for Africa News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, a diplomatic spat between Pretoria and Kigali drags on, with the South African Justice Minister warning that the government will not tolerate the settling of political scores on its soil. This after expelling several Rwandan diplomats last week. Also, a toilet door and a cricket bat are key forensic evidence before the judge on the murder trial of Oscar Pistorius. Questions remain over the South African Olympian's version of events prior to his fatal shooting of his girlfriend last year. And dozens of opposition figures in Burundi are charged with rebellion as fears grow that the president's planning to run for the top job once again. First up, Pretoria has warned that it will not be caught in the middle of foreign political score settling. The statement comes amidst the row with Rwanda, which saw the two nations expel several of each other's diplomats last week of allegations that Kigali had sent assassins onto South African territory to hunt down Rwandan dissident Faustin Nyamwasa. Pretoria sent home 3 Rwandans and 1 diplomat from Burundi, alleging they were linked to the botched attack. South Africa is home to several Rwandan exiles, and Justice Minister Jeff Radebe says illegal activities on South African soil will not be tolerated.
There were attempted murders, including a murder of nationals who are in South Africa. As a South African government, we want to send a very stern warning to anybody anywhere in the world that our country will not be used as a springboard to do illegal activities. That we are a constitutional democracy, and that any individual or groups of people who abuse our human rights dispensation, they will face the full might of the law.
Well, their relations with Rwanda have been strained since Kigali's exiled former intelligence chief was found strangled in a Johannesburg hotel on New Year's Day. Minister Radebe says diplomatic relations with Rwanda remain intact. Kigali's ambassador says that issues still have to be ironed out. Correspondent Lisa Lowe earlier told us that an escalation in tensions could have an effect on the whole Great Lakes region.
We haven't severed ties with Rwanda, and that would be very serious. And it would be it would be a shame in a time when, South Africa has made many efforts and to play a role as a peacemaker on the continent. President Jacob Zuma has now been sending envoys to South Sudan, and South Africa has been very involved in the Great Lakes, have been for a very long time, but now especially these last couple of months with the UN intervention, Special Intervention Force, South Africa helped, the Congolese drive out the M23. So that's strong relations with Kinshasa, which obviously also plays in this whole strategic dynamic with Rwanda, and the DRC, the problems there. And then if there would be a serious row between South Africa and Rwanda, let's say if relations were severed, that would be a shame for the efforts to bring peace and stability to the Great Lakes region.
Now, Nisa, such a bold statement by Pretoria must heap more pressure on Rwandan President Paul Kagame.
I think Kigali is under pressure. 20 years ago, everybody were very keen to be friends with Rwanda and with President Paul Kagame, but slowly relations, as we all know, since the accusations that Rwanda has been supporting the M23 relations with countries like the US have deteriorated. Many European countries also accusing Rwanda for continuing to support rebels in the eastern DRC. So President Paul Kagame isn't in a very strong situation internationally at this point. I'm not saying perhaps not I'm not talking about his immediate region, but further afield. So at the moment, having a big row with South Africa and being accused now of sending hit squads to eliminate political opponents in South Africa, that doesn't look very good. It's not very good for Paul Kagame at this point.
Lisa Lowe there from Johannesburg. Another news, a police officer in court today for Oscar Pistorius' murder trial reenacted for the judge the moment the South African track star used a cricket bat to smash down the toilet door through which he'd shot his girlfriend. That led to a back and forth with the Olympian's defence lawyer over details of Pistorius' account of his actions after opening fire on Reeva Steenkamp last Valentine's Day.
Made a physical match with a door.
Trigonometry and the testimony of a forensics expert made for a dramatic reenactment during Wednesday's proceedings. The actual bathroom door through which the fatal shots were fired at Reeva Steenkamp was brought into court. A reconstruction of the toilet cubicle where she was devastatingly injured erected behind. At issue, the defendants claim that after firing from his stumps, he put on his artificial legs, and only then did he try to break down the door with his cricket bat. The witness agreed the bat was used after, but not with all of Pistorius' story.
The marks on the door is actually consistent with him not having his legs on, and I suspect it must be similar to the height that he was when he fired the shots.
The police colonel insisted the angle could only have been made by someone much shorter than him, but under cross-examination admitted he found the action difficult when he tried to simulate it as a double amputee.
When I lift my feet, I'm off balance.
Whether Pistorius was wearing his artificial limbs when he tried to break down the door, just the latest bone of contention between the sides. On Tuesday, a pathologist testified Reeva Steenkamp had eaten less than 2 hours before she was killed, contradicting the athlete's account that they'd been in bed for several hours. Prosecution witnesses have also painted him as a gun-toting individual liable to lose his cool. The trial, now midway through week 2, is expected to hear from over 100 witnesses.
The president of Libya's parliament suspended plans to launch an assault on rebels blockading oil terminals in the east and given them 2 weeks to stand down or face military action. There have been warnings that an offensive against former revolutionary fighters who've taken over several oil export terminals risks plunging the country into civil war. The escape of a North Korean flagged tanker carrying crude sold by rebels in defiance of the government triggered the ouster yesterday of ex-Prime Minister Ali Zidane. He's reportedly sought refuge somewhere in Europe after having been voted out by Parliament. Burundi's charged the leader of a key opposition party and 71 supporters with rebellion. This follows clashes between the police and demonstrators over the weekend. Critics of the government fear the president wants to go against the constitution by running for a third term next year. Our Nicolas Chemin has more.
These supporters of the MSD opposition party were arrested on Saturday after clashes with the police. But it's only this Wednesday that they were formally charged with rebellion. If found guilty, they face life in jail. Before going into hiding, their leader, Alexis Ndouidje, spoke out this weekend.
We are ready to die, to resist. We will remain non-violent. We want our dignity, the dignity of the people, to be respected. That means we want justice and freedom.
An arrest warrant has been issued for Ndouidje. The opposition is afraid that President Pierre Nkurunziza will run for a third mandate next year, even though the constitution doesn't allow this. Analysts say more violence is likely in the run-up to the election.
There's a climate right now where there's a total lack of communication between various political factions. This creates fear and suspicion in our country, which has already been rocked in the past by a civil war for ethnic and political reasons. If the ruling party and the president insist that he can run for a third mandate, then unfortunately there will be more tensions in the future.
Opposition parties believe the president wants to change the constitution. It was written during the peace agreement that put an end to Burundi's civil war between Hutus and Tutsis. The conflict lasted between 1993 and 2006 and left 300,000 people dead.
Well, that wraps up African News for me for today. I'll be back there with more tomorrow. Stay with us. A short break. More news and headlines from around the world coming up. Take care.